All right, that's Sarah Sanders wrapping up the White House press briefing where she received a lot of questions about tonight. That meeting with Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi, dinner at the White House tonight. President Trump's push for a bipartisan tax plan also came up, and the latest in the repealing of Obamacare. Senator Sanders, a single-payer health care proposal, and throwing some shade on Hillary Clinton's book. That also got thrown in there. Let's go to Chris Plant, a syndicated radio talk show host, and Leslie Marshall, a Fox News contributor and syndicated radio talk show host. Chris, I'll go to you first. On that dinner tonight with Chuck and Nancy, she said the president wants to work with anybody that wants to move America forward. That was the White House response.
Well, it seems reasonable, doesn't it? There are two parties. The president is in the White House. The two parties are at the other end of Pennsylvania Avenue. The Republican leadership, Mitch McConnell and Paul Ryan, aren't helping very much with President Trump's agenda or with the Republican agenda. The president is going to need at least 60 votes in the Senate to get any major tax reform through. Therefore, he's going to have Democratic votes. And Sarah Huckabee Sanders was correct in that President Trump, first of all, he can't win for losing here. If he doesn't work with the Democrats, then the press and the Democrats go after him for not working with the Democrats. When he does work with the Democrats, then they try to break President Trump's base away from the president. He's working with the other party. Imagine that. It is almost an alien concept after 8 years of President Obama. I'm glad he is, and maybe it'll light a fire under the Republicans. And he's going to need some Democrat votes. And welcome to Washington. This is how government is supposed to work. We've just forgotten because it's been so long. Yeah, Leslie, I mean, they couldn't just be pleased with the fact that he's sitting down with the leader of the Democratic Party. They then say, well, why isn't Mitch McConnell going to be there? Her response was he just wants to have an open, honest conversation with Democratic leadership.
Well, that's because Donald Trump does what's best for Donald Trump. Donald Trump may say he was a Republican, but I think just like Bernie Sanders, who ran as a Democrat, as an independent, not really Republican or a Democrat, he's a deal maker, and he's going to make a deal with whoever can get what he wants done. He wants tax reform done, and he wants it done a very specific way. As you heard from Speaker Ryan, he's hoping the president will be more conservative on this issue, and obviously Democrats want, as they historically have as a party, more tax cuts, not for the upper 2%, but for the middle and lower income families, which is going to fly for Republicans. So the president needs the Democrats here, and that's why he's whining and dining with them. And to remind Chris, President Obama, the former president, did extend an olive branch, an invitation numerous times to Republicans to the White House, and they just didn't want to come.
All right, Chris, quick response to that. Go ahead. I want to move on to health care.
Well, I'm sorry. President Obama was the most partisan president probably of my lifetime. Any invitation was designed to bring people in to humiliate them, as he did with Paul Ryan at the speech on economics early in his term. And he was utterly hostile to the Republicans throughout his term.
All right. I want to move on to health care. But first, there was a quick update on Irma. Sarah Sanders confirming that the president will be traveling down to Florida. Specifically, she said the Naples-Fort Myers area. They'll have more information on that. But moving on to health care. Leslie, I'll go to you first on this. On health care, she said, I can't think of anything worse than having government more involved in your health care. She also said America doesn't support single payer, or Bernie Sanders would be sitting in the Oval Office right now. Leslie?
I actually don't disagree with her on this, although I do think that the government's done a fairly good job with Medicare, and I think many seniors would agree with me on that. With regard to single payer, if you remember, there are many Democrats and certainly Bernie supporters who were angry at and rolled their eyes at Hillary Clinton, who a couple of years ago said this isn't going to fly. And even though we can have a lot of press reports, and I'm a Democrat, and I want to have a reformation in our health care, and I want everyone to be insured. The majority of Americans are insured by their employer and are insured. And in order for this to work, you're talking about a complete overhaul where the majority of people could be left out. 15 Democrats standing with Bernie Sanders, many of which who might run in 2020, does not pass legislation make for the Democrats. And Democrats been saying this for years.
And Chris, obviously tax reform, tax cuts is going to be on the table for that discussion tonight with the leaders of the Democratic Party. On that, Sarah Sanders said in that briefing, the president's focus has never been on the wealthiest of Americans. It's been on tax cuts to the middle class. You hope that's the conversation happening tonight.
Well, and also this sort of tortured use of language on whether it's tax cuts for the rich and the top 2% or the top 1% or whatever the class warfare talking point of the day is. Listen, tax cuts across the board are tax cuts across the board. They're not focused on tax cuts for the rich. They're focused on tax cuts because our tax system is out of date, and we need to light a fire under the economy, get to that 3% economic growth, which we did in the second quarter, and create jobs and create wealth in this country, which is what we're good at. And the Democrats, for some reason, are hell-bent on impeding that.
You know, I thought it was really interesting. A lot of her responses when it came to Hillary Clinton and her book out and her explanation for the 2016 loss. And Sarah Sanders was asked about Hillary Clinton, saying, why can't this president be a president for all Americans?
Right.
Her response, this type of misunderstanding of who the president is, exactly one of the reasons that Hillary Clinton is not the president.
Well, deplorables. Was she going to be president of all the deplorables and the racists and the misogynists and all the people that she demonized on the campaign trail?
All right. Busy
Please.
day, guys. Thank you for joining us, Leslie
Thanks,
and
Amy.
Chris. All right.